I'd like to welcome everyone to the budget hearing for March 1st, 2021. Here today, and in the back, we have the opens meetings law posted in the back northwest corner. And we also have Mr. Carlson here, and we'll let you take it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. Again, thank you for having me and the rest of the team here this afternoon to talk a little bit about budget preview and to share some preliminary ideas and some look backs on what's been happening and what we anticipate may be happening in the future. This is our fourth of 5 meetings to highlight the different outcome areas that we all work together to fund and program in order to provide the city services and the supports that help make Lincoln the great community that it is. Today we're going to talk about strong and resilient city, and a little bit taken out of the budget book for the folks watching at home, but budget book reminds us that Lincoln's committed to building a strong foundation for generations to come by promoting resiliency and sustainability and the security of infrastructure and built capital. So we want to make sure that our infrastructure is robust and effective, water and energy use are available, and that we have smart usage of those, that we're efficient, sustainable, and that our policies and our systems are guided by those sustainability goals, and that we continue to make smart choices for Lincoln that has made the great community that it is today and continues to be the great community into the future. So I'm here today with various folks from the LTU team and with Mickey Esposito from our Resilient Lincoln Initiative. And at this time, I'd like to invite Director Liz Elliott up to kick off the Lincoln Transportation and Utilities Department.
All right. Thank you, John. Council members. I'm here to do a brief introduction, and then I will hand it off to the rest of my team to get into some of the real nitty-gritty. But LTU provides a foundation for a thriving city by providing essential services that enhance our community's quality of life. Our values direct how we accomplish our work and shape our culture. LTU, as you know, erects and maintains street and traffic signs, cleans, repair, and builds streets, builds and maintains sewers and water mains, and manages our solid waste facility. Every day, our team of nearly 600 strives to provide these services in the safest and most efficient way. We are dedicated to delivering the highest quality of service to Lincoln and its residents. To guide our focus and to help us sustain our motivation, each division sets out goals, and you can find most of our goals in the budget books and laid out there. Today, we'll walk you briefly through some of these goals and projects that impact how we build our budgets. I will talk very briefly in the beginning about the administration and business office and a few big things that we're expecting over the next 15 months there. Then we'll turn it over to transportation, StarTran, and then we'll wrap things up with utilities. Every year we strive to improve, and the last year is no different. Obviously, when the pandemic hit, we weren't exactly sure how that was going to impact our services, but like always, this team rose to the challenge of the pandemic and continued to provide services at an extremely high level. We've talked over the last 12 months about all of the things that we've done in the pandemic, but in the last few weeks alone, our team has volunteered at and provided traffic management at all of our vaccination clinics. We also have recently teamed up with the Urban Development Department to be a intake center for the utility assistance. So our water billing department has taken on that challenge and will actually be an intake center and help with that utility assistance and take down that information. The pandemic really only highlighted the great work that this team does and will continue to do. So turning right into our administration and business office, the administration and business office supports services for the entire LTU team. Our accountants work directly with each division to plan and manage their budgets. Our communications team work with each division to educate and put out information to the public as much as they can and as timely as possible. We also have a security team that ensures that our facilities and assets remain safe and secure, and all of this makes up the administration and business office. One significant project that the administration team will be working on this next budget season is reaccreditation. LTU became accredited for the first time in 2018, thanks to the work of Ms. Esposito and the team. And this accreditation reflects our drive to professionalize the department and employ best practices. Over the next 15 months, the LTU administration team will be coordinating our reaccreditation process, and we expect to have a site visit in October of 2022 to ensure that we maintain our accreditation. In addition to the accreditation process, our business team has also been looking at their structure and how they are organized to make sure that we are running as efficiently as possible. We've had a few retirements in the last 12 months that have allowed us to really dig in and reorganize. So that is finding us some efficiencies in the billing process. We're also working with a 30-year-old legacy billing system that was built in-house and is still on those green screens that we all love so much. So we are actually in the process of trying to find a more efficient billing system. Our current billing system does not allow us to utilize text messaging or emails. And so we're hoping with this next billing system we'll actually be able to provide information to our customers in the way that they prefer electronically. This will also provide us necessary reports that can help us identify maybe issues. So if we're looking at customers who are in the arrears, maybe we can provide reports to see if there's specific areas and be able to help them in different ways. We also hope that we can integrate this system with our assets in the water division as well, so we can tie the billing information with the assets. And then if we are working on, say, a water main project, we can actually email or provide text notification that projects will be happening in that particular neighborhood to those customers. So again, it's just another way of efficiency and to provide a better customer experience. We also hope that the ability to pay your bill online will become much easier and more efficient for our customers. So with that, those are just a few of the things that you'll see from the business administration division that we are building into the budgets going forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Ron to talk about transportation.
Thank you. Director Elliott. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are y'all doing today?
We're here.
Good. Can you hear me okay? Just a second as I reconfigure things here just a bit. Can you all hear me fine? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much, Chairman and council members. The fiscal year 21-22 projected transportation budget is as shown on this chart. And it is very similar to our current year budget in both revenue sources and distribution, except for one particular area. The one proposed revenue source that is going to be significantly different in our proposed budget compared to the current year budget is a planned $15 million of highway allocation bond monies. This is shown on the pie chart as that dark blue 17% slice, intended to accelerate critical infrastructure, transportation infrastructure investments. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on in the presentation. But right now, I'd like to share some of our current and planned operations and activities that will be delivered through this projected budget. The City of Lincoln has an incredibly dedicated and talented snow fighting team. And nowhere was this more evident than the recent historic snow event that occurred on January 25th. With almost 15 inches of snow falling within 24 hours and 16 and a half inches in some areas of the city, it was the largest snowfall event in Lincoln since 1965, or 55 years ago. A snow emergency was declared at 12:01 on Monday the 25th. And even as the first snowflakes were falling, 20 crews were already on the streets applying granular salt and brine. By 8 a.m. that same morning, more than 100 crews were plowing arterials, emergency routes, bus routes, and residential streets. Full plowing operations were underway by 8 a.m. that morning. The snow continued to fall for another 24 hours and accumulated near 15 inches. At this time, 110 crews were working, with 60% of our crews focused on arterial and emergency routes and 40% focused on residential streets. From early Wednesday morning through 7:30 p.m. that Friday, snow fighters plowed, they removed snow, they addressed service requests, and they continued material spreading, and the first pass of all residential streets had been completed by that Thursday. From Friday through the rest of the following weekend, snow fighters followed up with a second pass through all residential streets, and that was completed on Sunday. After almost 1 week of continuous around-the-clock operations, 24-hour operations came to an end on Sunday afternoon on January 31st. Now, just a couple statistics for you. The maximum number of crews that were deployed at any given time was about 125. Snow fighters plowed 1,684 arterial lane miles of roads and 1,183 residential and other street lane miles of roads. And they removed more than 80,000 cubic yards of snow. So now let's please look at a couple of new approaches that were implemented that really helped out operations during this event. Okay, first, residential streets were attacked earlier on than they ever had. Previously, residential street operations would only occur after arterial and higher priority streets had been addressed. But by having additional contractor resources available and able to engage immediately, we initiated and essentially completed residential street plowing 37 hours prior, faster than we would have a year ago. Secondly, total snow removal in districts occurred sooner than it would have earlier under previous operation plans. Again, because of these additional resources, focusing on residential streets, available city crews and resources could begin the snow removal operations sooner than they could have previously. And thirdly, the new and easy to understand parking ban approach seemed to have enhanced compliance. Correct parking on residential streets has a huge positive effect on snow plowing operations and efficiency, and it helps things go faster. Cooperation by the public with parking adherences truly does help residential plowing occur faster and better. An enhancement new to winter operations this year will aid in status sharing and to the public as well as operational transparency. LTU has invested in the installation of GPS transponders in all snowplow and snow fighting equipment. This now includes contractors that will be working on residential streets. Previously, these transponders only existed in city vehicles, and the paths that were displayed on the snow fighting map website were limited to arterials, emergency routes, and bus routes only. And while this system is currently only in the beta testing phase, when it's fully operational and when snow operations are occurring within residential streets, anyone with an internet access will be able to see in almost real time the plow status of our snow fighters down to the residential street level and what the pass condition is going to be, what is for their particular street. Further, to enhance expanded snow fighter team effectiveness, we've designated a coordinator for each district to enhance communication, control, and action between LTU snow fighting leadership, our city plow teams, our contractor resources, and our inspection resources. And finally, additional continuous education and methodology training for all snow fighters will occur to enhance efficiency, proficiency, and safety of operations. Now, to continue to enhance our snow fighting capability and to replenish older equipment that has exceeded its life cycle effectiveness, LTU is investing in 12 new super combo snow trucks. These have already been ordered, and they're expected to be delivered by September ahead of next snow season. The total cost for these 12 vehicles is $3.6 million, or about $300,000 per. This super combo technology will allow these trucks to apply either liquid anti-icing or granular de-icing material treatment from a single vehicle, a single backpack unit. There will be no need to retool and physically convert vehicles for a change in operation, like currently exists with our current fleet. These super combo units will be more efficient, they will have less downtime, and they will be safer for employees by eliminating the swapping of large components and heavy pieces of equipment for a different mission. The upcoming 2021 construction season will be a robust one. As you are probably aware, the construction season begins usually around March, April-ish, about now, and runs through November, December-ish, during periods of warm weather. Our anticipated portfolio of projects to be under construction this season has an estimated contract value of nearly $53.9 million. This will include 33 street projects totaling approximately 27 miles in length, 7 water projects totaling approximately 7 miles, and approximately 9 miles of sidewalk projects. So as you can see, we have a pretty busy construction season just about to begin. And here's a quick list of some of the projects that will be shortly under construction, and a few more, because I know you can all read so quickly. But now I'd like to shift gears just a little bit from our construction season to discuss Lincoln on the Move. As you're aware, Lincoln on the Move is the quarter-cent voter-approved street investment that Lincoln citizens approved in April of 2019 to support additional street funding to maintain, to improve, and to grow Lincoln streets. Here is an example of a recent Lincoln on the Move funded street improvement project. Residential streets in the Zaman Elementary School vicinity were in disrepair with significant cracking, rutting, and potholes, but they were nicely refurbished and improved just this past August. Lincoln on the Move revenues and investments have been underway since October of 2019. And for the first 12 months of that program, projected revenues were estimated to be $13 million. But even through the early portions of a pandemic environment, actual revenues for this 12-month period exceeded projections at $13.8 million. This resulted in a revenue intake of approximately $800,000, or 6% greater than what was projected. So now let's take a look at the current fiscal year. Taking a look at Lincoln on the Move revenues for our current fiscal year, this trend is continuing. When we look at the first 6 months of fiscal year 2021, actual revenues collected are continuing to exceed projected revenues by approximately $1 million. Well, what does this mean? It means that we can invest these additional monies further into the program, into the program's goals. We can invest them further into the city's inventory of transportation needs, and we can enhance more of the city's infrastructure transportation projects. Essentially, we can do more than was anticipated. The City of Lincoln maintains over 2,600 lane miles of roadway, 1,549 miles of sidewalk, 425 signalized intersections, and 148 bridges and bridge structures. Currently, approximately 1,215 of these lane miles of roadway currently fall below our target measure of needing only minor maintenance only. These streets are shown in red and yellow on this slide map. And they should be the streets that we should be focusing on. It should be noted, though, that this map is just a snapshot in time. As traffic, winter conditions, time, impact pavements deteriorate. All infrastructure assets deteriorate. And this is a continuous cycle. Our maintenance forces will provide patches and repairs for temporary repairs, and our restoration projects will make repairs and improve the assets for a longer-term horizon. But this cycle is continuous, and it never ends. So to augment revenues and accelerate investments into these critical infrastructures, $15 million in highway allocation bond funding is being proposed for the 21-22 fiscal year. These enhanced investments will be in arterial streets, residential streets, roundabouts, signalized intersections, and turn lanes. These enhancements will increase the efficiency of the movement of people and goods throughout the city, and as well, they will enhance the quality of life for Lincoln's residents and visitors alike. Lincoln is an active community, and so is our active transportation and shared micromobility program. Now, active transportation is any self-propelled human-powered mode of transportation such as walking, biking, or skating. Shared mobility refers to lightweight, low-speed devices such as bikes, electric scooters, or segways that are shared by multiple users. City of Lincoln is very fortunate to offer several active transportation amenities like our expansive trail networks that connect many different portions of the city. And our shared micromobility programs of Bike Link and Scooter Link provide multimodal options for enhanced mobility, and they help to maintain a healthy lifestyle and environment. In 2020, we had over 61,000 shared micromobility trips in the city. And since its inception, Lincoln's shared bike program has had over 101,000 trips and over 12,400 users. Some of our upcoming goals are to continue to implement our on-street bicycle facilities as detailed in Lincoln's bike plan, continue educational efforts around safety of pedestrians and bicyclists, and provide a 6-month report on Scooter Link coming up here to the City Council in upcoming months. Thank you very much. And now I'll ask Michael to come forward to discuss transit.
Thank you, Ron.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
In the course of all of the discussions, when are we going to have an opportunity to ask questions?
It's a good question. Do we want to wait until we've gone through all the reports and then we can, on all three, because we have what, water and wastewater and
I think we could do it either way, but if we wanted to wait till the end, then.
I'd rather kind of get through it all.
Sure.
And then we know
Absolutely.
what we have for time.
Okay.
I've wrote down some, so. Ron's not going to get away that easy. Can't wait for Donna to show up.
Chairman, council members, I'm Mike Davis, Transit Manager, and excited to talk about transit services with StarTran. StarTran operates fixed route, paratransit services, and most recently, microtransit services. And we have several goals, including safety, efficiency, environmental friendliness, and one of the goals that we'll spend quite a bit of time on today is convenience for passengers. And we continue to adjust services to meet that convenience. One of the things that we started working on late last year was a financial model for StarTran to help us in our budgeting process, as well as to evaluate the potential for fare-free service. We've seen several other communities over the past couple of years dive into fare-free, and so it's something that we want to look closely at. We expect this model to be fully completed in September of 2021, so we're excited about that coming up. StarTran also has two big projects that we've been working on for several years, and the first one is a CNG fueling station. And this has helped our fleet become more environmentally friendly with reduced emissions. And so it's been a great project. But one of the other exciting things about this project is the ability to relocate our storage, maintenance, and administration. If you've been down to the StarTran facility, you can see us bursting at the seams and parking buses outside with low ceilings in a 1930s facility. So this will be a great move. And we have completed the environmental process on this facility and are moving into land negotiations. So that's exciting. The second big project is a multimodal transit center, and this is an off-street transit center, unlike our on-street transit center that we have today. And this center will provide both efficient transfers among buses. It will also have passenger amenities such as bathrooms, things like that that are desperately needed for our transit system. And over the last couple of years, we have completed a feasibility study, which is one of the first steps. We're starting starting environmental work right now, and then we'll be applying for build grants here in the near future. StarTran has over 800 bus stops. That's a lot of bus stops, and these bus stops really have helped make our system more efficient and have advertised our system. And we're continuing to improve these bus stops with adding passenger amenities such as bus shelters, benches, bus paths for easier boarding and alighting of buses. And we plan to continue to improve 25 to 30 bus stops each year, and these bus stop improvements have been very well received by our passengers. StarTran is also looking into some technology improvements and over this next year. One of the big things is scheduling software. StarTran has increased in size, and it's become very difficult to continue to schedule using Excel spreadsheets, to be able to go to a more robust system that will allow us to do bidding, run cutting, dispatching, and really do that in a more efficient way than what we do today. We also are looking at predictive maintenance, and with predictive maintenance, this allows us to replace parts before they break. And the big thing that does is allows us to have fewer road calls, and again, makes the service more convenient by not having to disrupt those trips for people going to work and school and other reasons. One of the needs that we have coming up here in the budget is a need for an apprentice mechanic. And this need is, one of the ways we look at this need is through the number of buses per technician, as well as the number of miles per technician. And right now, we have vehicles maintained per FT. We have about 9 buses per technician that are maintained, and a peer average is around 7. So we're doing, and that's increased over time. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting that need of having a properly maintained fleet. And adding one mechanic will help us bring us in line both with miles and with buses in that category. And another exciting project that we're starting this year is our transit development plan. This plan is created every 5 to 7 years at StarTran. We had a pretty big change back in 2015. And so we're excited to kick off this process again. It really helps involve the public, and as the city expands, look at the expansion needs as well as things that have changed within the city, and really a good chance to step back and make improvements overall in the system. And this will also coordinate well with the long-range transportation plan that's currently underway and other planning efforts as well. So that is coming, and we hope that you'll all be involved in some of that public process as it comes. Let's see, we have a couple of small service changes that we're recommending in this next budget, and one is running the trolley on Saturdays. We introduced trolley vehicles probably just about a year and a half ago, and they've been increasing in ridership and been successful, and so we want to be able to have that on Saturdays as well. We found people are actually coming down just to ride the trolleys even if they don't have a place to go, and so being able to do that on a Saturday as well as go to different activities downtown is another exciting reason to have that on Saturdays. And then we're going to, we would like to remove the Route 14. That's actually just it was an enhancement to a route and kind of has ended up as a special route serving just a couple of businesses. It operates outside of our normal business hours. It's just one trip early in the morning. So we're looking at adjusting that as well. And That concludes StarTrans updates. Next, we'll turn it over to Donna Garden, the LTU Assistant Director with Utilities.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mike, for that introduction, and let's see if I got myself arranged here properly. Good afternoon, members of the council. I want to talk to you about all the other stuff that you haven't heard yet today. Particularly going to talk about water, wastewater, solid waste, and watershed. And I know these goals were reflected earlier in the slide, but obviously this is not all that we're about with utilities. Adequate water supply, proper sanitation via our wastewater systems, and solid waste management and flood protection are essential to a community. So I want to start with adequate water supply, and I want to give everybody a little update on what's going on with the flood recovery. The pictures you see before you are pictures that were taken. The one very far left is the picture taken before the flood, and I think you've all seen these pictures before. The little circle, excuse me, I have on there is where our well exists at the tip of the island, and the picture in the middle of the page is what it looked like right after the flood of 2019. I'm very, very proud to say that the picture you see on the far left was taken a number of weeks ago, and we have now full riprap and full armament in front of that island all the way around, but we basically rebuilt that island from scratch because there wasn't much left of it in the front. We hope to have the island well field completely restored by June and the north well field restored by September. We're fortunate to have the new east horizontal collection well in service to cover our summer needs. And I think I can safely say, I was going to say cross your fingers, we have ice out of the river, but I think we can safely say as of this morning that we were looking at the river conditions and they're very clear right now. So I think we're out of the scary part of the year for us in March. Maybe my March will be a good March this year. We have been meeting weekly with FEMA and NEMA representatives and hope to have obligations soon on all of the repairs that we are doing and will be doing and that are not covered by our current insurance. So we're looking at modest increases in the budget, but we do have some pretty big things in front of us. There are other flood mitigation projects which we probably will be looking at and trying to decide and bring before you as we move forward that were not included under the obligation through FEMA and NEMA. FEMA and NEMA basically look at putting at pre-disaster condition, and that's what we've done. They have taken some things into account that have made it a little bit different because we put some different armament, for instance, on the island. That was taken into consideration. As you know, we're trying to replace mains to make sure that we don't get behind the curve with water main breaks within the city. We're currently at 7, and we've maintained that this year. We've done a pretty good job about that. So 7 miles per year. We will continue to do that. And we're also a little behind in our meter replacement program. Just because we did shut down a little bit for the pandemic this year in order to protect our citizens, protect our employees. But we've ramped that back up again now, and we hope to have that meet the 4,400 that we plan to do every year. Some big changes coming forward, though. Just in January of this year, the lead and copper rule was re-released with some new obligations, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that. That will impact us pretty severely moving forward with our budgets. We're also looking at some types of water testing because we don't want to be another Flint, Michigan. We want to make sure we test if we're ever going to go to another source of water. That would be whether we interconnected with MUD or whether we went to the Missouri. This type of water testing will be very, very important. It's a long-term water testing. It takes approximately 2 years to get results from. So we'll be looking at doing some of that testing in the near future. And we also have some fairly big projects for water treatment plant upgrades. And that would be for removal of arsenic and some of the other pollutants that could be potentially coming through our water system. We've tracked arsenic for a long, long time. It's held very, very steady. But we feel that the more of the horizontal collector wells we put online, we will probably see that start to increase a little bit. So here's the new lead and copper rule, and it was, as I said, it just came out in the Federal Register in January, but it is in effect now. The new rules have a trigger level and an action level. The current rule simply has an action level. Once you've exceeded 15 parts per billion in your water when we test, and then we test at the household, because bear in mind, lead comes from pipes that are in households, not in the water itself. So this testing done in households, 90th percentile, reached 15 parts per billion. We had to take action with the current rule. We never, ever exceeded that with our testing that we did. The new rule drops a action level down to a 10 parts per billion. That may put some folks, maybe even us, into a situation where we have to do some action, and that would require speeding up our lead line replacement program. So testing techniques have changed too, so we really don't have any data to compare to. We can't look at what we previously did because the testing techniques have changed enough that they may be substantially different than what we've seen in the past. But in any case, these lead service lines obviously are, they are owned by the homeowner, but according to the lead and copper rule, we are responsible for making sure that our citizens are safe and would be responsible for replacing those lines. Along with those requirements, there's also considerable public communication and notification that is required under the rule, and that'll be coming forward with some other additional information that we'll have at a future date. This is a real quick synopsis of what our budget looks like in just a snapshot. Total 6-year estimated revenues, and these are estimated. I'm using model estimation with actual data, but we'll be updating that here in the next few weeks to get you some real precise data on this. But 6-year estimated revenues of $340 million, a total 6-year estimated operating budget of $158 million, and a total capital improvement program for the 6-year period is $220 million. And John Carlson saw this slide and said, so how are you going to cover the difference with this? And of course, that would be covered with revenue bonds. That's what we would use. And again, these are from rate revenues. These are revenue bonds, not geo bonds, so it doesn't affect property taxes. And I'll say this with all the utilities. This slide, in fact, is the same with all the utilities that have rate revenues. All of the costs for those utilities, their enterprise funds, all come from rates. We use our rate revenues to pay our bonds off, and we pay for everything else associated with our operating costs and capital improvement projects from our rate revenues. The Lincoln Water System revenue bonds remain very strong bond rating, and that means a low interest rate to the cities, which is very good. And the reason why it's so strong is because we try to maintain a 2.0 debt service coverage and 180 days cash on hand all the time. So. And I put this slide back in here. This is from last year's budget presentation. But as you can see, even with the modest rate revenue increases that we're kind of considering, I don't think it's going to move us much in the scale. We are still very affordable. As we finalize the budgets, we'll determine the rates necessary. And I believe all of you are scheduled to take a little Rate Model 101 course with us and talk about how we actually do set those rates. And I'm excited to share that with you. All of our capital improvement projects are based on our facilities master planning efforts, and it conforms to the comprehensive plan. Let's move on to our wastewater system. We had our news release yesterday, we are tied into the pipeline. We are making renewable natural gas from our biogas, and there's additional revenues associated with that, which will help very much with the budget for our wastewater system. We also had 2 big projects that came before you here recently. One was the ESCO, the Energy Savings Contract for our Smart Aeration Project, which will save us some energy at the plant. And also our biosolids upgrade at Northeast, which will be selling biosolids like we do very similarly at Teresa Street. So all good news. Well, and then there's some others. I mean, maybe it's good news or it's bad news, but as the city grows and the system grows, so does our need for capacity at our treatment plants. We'll be faced a needed expansion at Teresa Street Water Resource Recovery Facility. We'll be saving our rate revenues and our revenues from these other sources. for a $20 million project that will be designed, bid, and built in the next 4 years. Always planning for new growth in the collection system in the trunk sewers for East Lincoln, Southwest, and Oak Creek, and we're improving our infrastructure, including disinfection, headworks, and clarification upgrades. So here's, again, our quick snapshot of what it looks like in the wastewater realm. Total 6-year estimated revenues of $275 million. Total 6-year estimated operating budget of $122 million. Total capital improvement program for 6-year period of $181 million. And then, of course, we may have to have a small revenue bond for this program as well. But certainly those revenues that we're getting from our biogas project and from the other areas will help considerably. Same slide that we had before, and I'll just kind of go past that because, like I said, this applies to all of our utilities that have rate revenues. And looking at affordability with the wastewater comparison to our others, this again is from our last budget presentation. We'll be updating that with the new rates, but as you can see, our wastewater rates are very, very low by comparison to other cities around the country. Let's take a look at the one area that does not have a rate revenue associated with it, watershed. Watershed's going to be pretty static this budget cycle. We're not going to see a whole lot of change here. We do have a total capital improvement program for the 6-year period of $26 million, particularly funded by general obligations bonds that were passed in 2019. And the current funding for the capital improvements rely on GO bonds every 3 to 6 years. So we're probably not looking till we've got a very big project in front of us at Dead Man's Run that we'll be working on primarily. So looking at 2023 or 24 for another bond issue if that comes to pass. Obviously, like I mentioned, Dead Man's Run is a big part of this, but the Salt Creek Resiliency Study provided recommendations primarily for non-structural practices that influence how and where we build. A number of these recommendations are being considered for an update to the Drainage Criteria Manual that's coming out soon and will come before you. Increased minimum elevations will be included, increased stream corridor protection for riparian habitat. We're still looking at that to some extent, and the use of updated precipitation data that we talked about earlier. We're going to have a stakeholder review and get a number of stakeholders involved before we bring this before you, make sure we get all of their input and make sure we understand the implications of the changes in the Drainage Criteria Manual. Let's move on to solid waste. We have obviously effectively managed our solid waste, the landfill. We've got a number of things going on right now that we're very interested in. Our solid waste management plan update is underway. We have 15 community members along with city staff and our consultants that are guiding us through the update of the solid waste management plan that was put together back in 2013. It updates the 12 preferred paths from that original solid waste management plan and determines where our focus and our next steps should be in how Lincoln and Lancaster County manages their waste. We hope to have a draft available prior to the Climate Action Plan hearing, so we'll have that out, I hope, soon. Our landfill at Bluff Road now produces more biogas than the 3 engines that we have at LES Terry Bundy Station can use. So this is valuable gas, just like the gas we produce at our water resource recovery facilities. And we are undergoing an alternatives analysis, similar to what we did at Teresa Street, to see how to use that gas. Compost pilot is planned at Bluff Road to see if such operation is viable and to determine what infrastructure would be needed to supplement current food waste composting in Lincoln. Here's a snapshot of solid waste. Total 6-year estimated revenues of $107 million. Total 6-year estimated operating budget of $78.5 million. Total capital improvement program for the 6 years of $45 million. And there may be a revenue bond there too. I want to also give a little update on our consolidation of our recycle sites. I can see you all, yes. I understand the sensitivity here, yes. 2 of our larger sites are now available. Those are at North 48th Street and at 70th and A at Seacrest Field. Those are finished, and they should have lots more capacity than some of our smaller sites, and certainly a lot more capacity than the ones that we have closed. They are expanded and will have surveillance, so hopefully we can also eliminate some of the problems we had with illegal dumping at these sites. Our new expanded southwest site is scheduled for completion this spring, and we're going to keep our central site at Lewis Ballfield, at least for the time being, because we haven't found another alternate central site. We are currently working to secure a site in North and West Lincoln, so stay tuned. We're working closely with LPS right now, because I think that's a really good opportunity for us in both the new high schools to be able to have a permanent recycle site there. Let's see, that we have, with the closure of the sites, we've seen our collection costs come down considerably. So it is, our plan in terms of how and when we spend our money is working, and I know change is hard, and I'm hoping that the new sites will bring people more convenience and a lot less frustration with having them be filled to the brim. So we're hoping it works out. The bumps in the road that we've had, particularly around the holidays that occurred this year, before the consolidations. However, it's important to note that this is not the first year we've seen that, and I don't necessarily think it's due to the consolidation. But not only have we seen it before, this is the highest number of recyclables we've ever seen at the recycle collection sites this year. We had 7,274 tons last year. Previous years, we've only had about 7,000. So a considerable increase in the number of recyclables that we've seen coming through our collection system. But oddly enough, we haven't seen the numbers go down at the landfill. It's also one of the highest years we've seen at the landfill in terms of total waste coming to the landfill. Normally, garbage to the landfill follows the economy. It goes up when things are good and down when they're not. Tonnage to the landfill went up from 316,000 tons in 2018 to 319,000 tons in 2019 to 321,000 tons in 2020. And again, with our solid waste, it is an enterprise fund. All of these projects and programs are handled by our rate revenues and a little bit of grant funding that we get from NDEE. Solid waste, again, still tries to adhere to that 2.0 debt service coverage and 180 days cash on hand. And our landfill compares favorably. It's not the lowest, but it is in the mid-range of other landfills around us. And this, again, is from our budget presentation from last year. And with that, I think all of us are here to answer questions at this time.
Should we start with Ms. Garden here? Anybody have any questions for, yes, Councilman Christensen?
So when we look at the natural gas sales that we're doing, and what is the mix of RINs versus natural gas income?
I don't have those exact numbers in front of me. I can get them for you, but I will tell you that the RINs do provide us with the most substantial portion of that. We do receive 100% of the gas sales. That's part of the contract we have with Blue Source, and 80% of the RINs sales that we have on the market. But RINs do make up a big portion of that.
Okay, Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you think the increase, I'm just curious, in the recyclables this year and solid waste has to do with the pandemic and having people at home and we're eating at home? Or do you have any idea what to attribute those numbers to?
Well, my opinion is it is. It's particularly with recyclables. I think a lot of us have learned to shop online a lot more. We saw a lot of TV boxes out there, so.
Nice for some people.
But I don't have the answer to that, whether that's a trend we're seeing just because of economy-based forces or whether it was due to COVID-19. Hopefully we're going to find out what it's like without COVID-19 here real soon,
Right,
so.
right. Thank you.
Yes, Councilperson Raybold.
Donna, could you send us the numbers of the tonnage going to the landfill over the years? You mentioned them, but it wasn't in any of the slides. And then, going back to Councilwoman Ward's question, is the tonnage of recyclables broken down by product? So I'm guessing, because of the cardboard ban, that a big chunk of that has got to be cardboard, plus what you mentioned that people are shopping more online. than ever before.
I
But
can get that broken down by
By
product,
cardboard.
by cardboard, glass, whatever, yeah.
I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And can you give us an update on the recycling market? Are any of the recyclables that the city currently picks up, are any of them producing any positive income stream?
They are not right now.
Not even cardboard?
Even cardboard.
Okay.
But we are seeing some positive hope from our recycling processors, that there's good news there. We did hear from First Star Fiber on, if you can recall, when we talked about this, that they're charging us a processing fee now. We were kind of tentative that next year's budget, they were going to increase that, but as far as we know right now, they will not. So that's good.
And so the city is not making any money from cardboard?
No, we are not.
Okay, just so you know, the private sector is.
Yes, but yours is baled and ready to go
But we have-
directly to the mill.
Just for the record, we have both baled and loose.
Okay. Councilperson Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Garden, I have a couple of questions for you about water rates. I think we've got great water rates, and as we start to look at second source of water, I was looking at the Omaha, where Omaha sits in their water rates, and I was curious if you thought that their water rates had a lot to do with it coming out of the Missouri River, because I know we're looking at the Missouri as a second source, and I don't know if it's what needs to happen in order to make that potable is part of why their rates are more expensive, or if it's just their administrative and their system. I mean, they have a different system than we do. But I'm just curious, because we look at the second source and we look at the Missouri River, I see that Omaha is much higher than us.
I don't believe it has to do with the source of the water.
Okay.
I don't, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Garden, a couple things I'll probably be would like to maybe meet with you on is the new copper lead testing program. That sounds like that's going to be a big change in going forward. And then I'll look at some of your capital projects too and what they were. But again, as I understand, our rates are pretty well, we've been doing a 2% increase.
We haven't run models yet with the new data in them to see what the rate increase needs to be to cover our capital needs, but we'll have that for you here shortly.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Donna? How about for Mike Davis on LTU? Yes, Councilman Ward.
I do, thanks for Mr. Davis. And it's just a comment and one quick question that I want to say. Thank you. So during the snowstorm, first I need to comment to Director Elliott, and then this relates to my question for you, Mike. I want to say that during the January 25th snowstorm, everybody was getting all the emails and calls, and I immediately forwarded them to Director Elliott. And I want to thank you, Director, for your quick response to those constituents and to me, and I'm sure the rest of the council was getting those as well. Even they came at 10:30 at night or 11. I still really appreciate that, and thank you, because it had to be a really exhausting, busy time. So that's my comment and gratitude for you, Director. Thank you for that. It helped me understand what was going on, so I could also respond to texts and phone calls. And then one of these relates to one that I sent to you as well, Mike. I had a constituent who was writing kind of frantically because he was diabetic and depended on the handy van, and was concerned that the handy van could not get in his driveway. And it's a good thing I couldn't get out of my driveway, because I probably would have gone to get him, but which would not have been appropriate either. I understand that. So I know that you immediately responded, and Director Elliott responded. I was able to get his cell phone so that I could call him, because I was really worried that we would have someone become ill during a snowstorm that we were not helping, even though we want to help everyone and we're doing our best. And I know that you responded right away, and I appreciate that. I know that Director Elliott even also called this person, as I did, and we could not talk to them. They, by then, I think, had been dug out even before contacting me. So my question, having laid that groundwork for you, Mike, is how do we deal with a handy van during a storm like that? Because obviously something was working. So can you talk just a little bit about how that works during an epic snowstorm for people needing services?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. This was a challenge, as was previously mentioned, one of the biggest snowstorms in many, many years. And StarTran was proud of the fact that we hadn't closed services since like 1974. So this time created at least for our fixed route and handy van, just a few short hours of closure while we were able to work things out. But yeah, our vehicles actually do very well in the snow. They're heavier. It was especially fun. This was our first year to see our electric buses and see how well they would do in the snow, and they did well as well. Probably our most difficult vehicles were our minivans, and we're continuing to look at improvements in tires and things for those, but most of our vehicles did very well. And regarding customers, I know everyone really pitched in to help plow sidewalks and things of that nature for those who had difficulty getting to the actual vehicles. So yeah, just a lot of good things that we saw on a lot of fronts. And on top of everything, we did have a new snow contract this year, which helped us a lot. The timing was just perfect. We have a contractor that plows snow at 150 bus stops, so that was also a good thing.
That's a lot of bus stops.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Davis? Yes, Councilperson Rabel.
Thank you, Mike. I have just a couple of clarifications. You mentioned the fare free and the study was going to be done when?
In September of 2021, yep.
21, okay.
This fall.
And then my other question, or maybe it's a clarification, because I know you talked about properly maintained fleet, and then you mentioned bringing an apprentice on. I'm pretty sure we properly maintain our fleet already, but in that ratio, that means perhaps there might be like a delay so that vehicle will not get back out in operation because it's still being serviced, right? Is that what probably?
Yes, so our fleet is properly maintained. What we've had to do is hire a contractor to assist with maintenance, so bringing another person on board will alleviate that need for a contractor to be doing some inspections and things like that. So, and I think the weather has taken we've had more small accidents, things like that with weather-related issues. So we're anticipating that, yeah, a new technician will help alleviate those issues.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councilperson Ward.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mike, I forgot. I had one more question.
Okay.
And you may have answered this, so forgive me. So Route 14, you mentioned, has one route in the very early morning.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us where? Is that the VA campus route, or is that something different?
No, this serves community corrections and, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councilperson Washington.
That was my same question. I wanted to know a little bit more about Route 14 and what part of you're taking a bus out, so one of the stops.
Yeah, it's one trip. It operates at 5:20 in the morning, which is actually earlier than any of our other buses go out. And it's kind of turned into more of a charter trip where we're not servicing our normal bus stops. We're just going to corrections and then to Kawasaki with that trip. And so we're trying to refocus back in to our regular route service and make sure that we're being in compliance with the services we're providing as well.
Okay. I had one quick question about the University of Nebraska and our contract with them. where do we stand, or?
Yes, so we have 2 contracts with UNL, and both the next contract, we will actually be able to join those contracts together, and that will happen a year from this August. So for the next year and a half, we'll have 2 contracts in place, and then we hope to join those together with 1 contract going forward, which we're excited about. And so everything has been, we are going to, the UNL routes will be part of the transit development plan, and so we'll continue to look at any changes there. But the only change we've had is just a small change on one of the Innovation Campus routes.
They've been profitable, or they work?
Yeah, so UNL does, through those contracts, pay for those routes and for the buses as well associated with those routes.
Okay. And we also have routes that serve high schools, or junior highs, or middle schools?
Yes, that's correct. We have 13 what we call booster routes that run in the PM, and then there's a lesser number that run in the AM. So they run once in the morning and then once in the afternoon. They do go typically directly to the school and then out into the neighborhoods. And with that service, we don't, other than the fare revenue that we receive, which we're free right now, so we don't have fare revenue right now, but there's no additional funding that pays for those routes.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mike. Do we have any questions for Ron? Yes, we do. Weren't getting away that easy.
Let's do it.
Okay, we have Benny would like to go. Mr. Shob?
Let me find a microphone. Hello? Hello? First, I want to thank everyone for their efforts during our snow apocalypse this year. But one of the things I've really noticed a lot of is that we had some parking bans in place and there was a little bit of confusion. I live in the near south and there were several vehicles on 16th and 17th that got plowed in, they got buried. Have you guys thought about, or as part of your long-term plan, figuring out a better method to communicate with drivers to ask them to move their vehicles off the streets? I'm wondering if the message, when I've talked to people, they said, well, I don't watch local news, I don't listen to local radio, I haven't read a newspaper. Please tell me there's something in the works to figure out a way to communicate better with drivers and ask them to move their cars off the street.
Councilman, that's something we can certainly look into and consider, but yeah, there's all sorts of methods for communication with Twitter and those type of social media applications. Those are opportunities there. Traditional press is an opportunity there. News releases and news interviews are probably great ways to try to spread the word as much as possible. But those are our primary tools. We can use our internet and web-based communications. But we would certainly be open to any kind of suggestions or ideas that can spread that word better. Because you're exactly right. There are segments of the population that may not be plugged in, may not be online, may not be socially media savvy, things like that. And the further that we can reach into the communities and communicate with them, the more effective our parking ban will be. We will certainly look into all options.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, would you please consider looking into some other ways, because I found out, I didn't realize we'd gone to a different style of ban, odd year, odd side, even year, even side.
Right.
And I think I'm pretty well plugged in, so I'm sure
You would think.
that most people, yeah. And then I saw a number of vehicles that were just plowed in and people were a little confused on where they were supposed to be.
I agree with you, and I think there's always going to be some, portion of the community that's, isn't going to get the message. I mean, that is going to happen. But we did see a higher rate of compliance this time around. So the simplicity of it, and that word did get out, and our snow fighters had a much better time traversing those residential streets. So we're making steps in the right direction, but we can always do better.
That positive thing is the first time I've heard that. I appreciate you saying we did better, because the public hasn't actually agreed with that statement as much as I'd like. And my point is, I'd like to direct you to try a little harder to figure out a better way to communicate with them.
We will look into all options.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilperson Raybold.
Thank you, Ron. I know this was probably one of the largest snowfalls you've had to deal with, and
That's
so.
the truth.
So welcome to Nebraska.
That's an understatement, in fact.
Yeah, but it was handled incredibly well, despite a few glitches with, plowing on the more congested streets. But I'm concerned, like, what percentage of our budget have we blown through, of our snow removal budget have we blown through by the end of December? What percentage of our budget have we blown through by the end of January? Don't know if it's too soon to be able to say what's the percentage of our snow removal budget have we exceeded by the end of February. So just kind of to get a better idea of how we're handling all your efforts, but they're not free.
Councilmember, I did not bring those specific numbers with me. We were prepared to get an update from our budget, budget office on where we stood today. I don't know. Okay, we did not bring those with us, but we can certainly get those and provide those to you.
Okay, that's something I've always been
Because
curious, and I know there's delay because of the private contractors that you work with, so.
That is absolutely correct. We stopped to wait for their bills and invoices and things to come in and be received, but we could put a marker down and give you our best information as of a date certain.
Okay, thank you, and knock on wood, let's hope we don't get any more snow.
Councilperson Washington.
Well, welcome to snowy Nebraska. I have a question about the super trucks. Can you tell me again, how are they being paid for?
These are COPS funded monies.
All right, thank you very much.
Follow up to that. What money are you using out of the budget to pay the cops off? Do you know?
I do not know.
That is built into our O&M budget and as part of our fleet costs that we do bill out. Currently, LTU divisions, with the exception of Watershed, pay for 100% for their fleets. Obviously, we have Parks and Watershed that are at our general fund, and they pay 45% replacement costs. So it's those fees, and we've budgeted in the repayment for that.
Okay, get a breakdown. So you're saying it's coming out of the general budget, not out of any federal funds?
Well, the LTU portions are all through federal and state funds. And then there'd be a very small percentage out of Watershed and Parks. But unlike LTU divisions, where we pay 100%, Parks and Watershed are only, it's about 45%. Of the full cost. So
You could send that to me, that'd be great.
definitely,
Yeah.
we will get those figures total. And I sent an email to our budget office, but I don't have the updates on the snow one yet. With the snow, because many of the contractors only bill once a month, then we're delayed on getting those costs and invoices. So as soon as I have those updates, I can shoot out an email to everyone with those updated winter operation figures.
Okay. Yes.
Sandra, you brought up a good question about the super trucks, but are the super trucks used primarily for the arterials, or are they going to be going into the residentials?
These are larger trucks that are more for the arterials because they're too big to fit down some of our smaller residentials. But the one thing with these trucks that I know I fail to highlight and that we don't necessarily point out is these are actually trucks that will be used year-round because they will also be able to help with the construction projects, hauling things, pulling trailers, that type of thing. So these actually are trucks that will be used all year round, not just in the winter time. Obviously, we really want them for the efficiency of winter operations because they handle both granular and the liquid material, but these will serve us year round.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you, sir.
And
Things for Liz, Miss Elliott, to wrap this up.
business manager just emailed me and we will have numbers on Thursday. So I will get those out to all of you Thursday.
But do you have the numbers for December?
Thursday.
Yes, hold on one second. I think I
Or
do.
maybe even January?
Thursday.
I will have to double check that. I want to, we were right about $1 million if I remember correctly. So let me search through my emails.
Okay.
And then I will forward that to you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay.
All
Thank
right?
you, Ms. Elliott.
Okay.
All right.
Anything for Director Elliott?
Thank you all very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Esposito.
Hello. Okay,
No.
got to follow directions very closely. My name is Mickey Esposito, and I'm Senior Policy Advisor to the Mayor. I am so excited to talk to you a little bit about Resilient Lincoln. So this is going to be different because we're kind of projecting what outcomes we'll measure after the after the hearing on the Climate Action Plan and why we've sort of reached this point. But I do want to tell you a little bit about what we're tracking as far as measures now in formulating this plan, and then what will come forward. So you saw this mission statement earlier when John shared it, but I want to really hone in on this last paragraph. So as part of this effort, we've engaged the community to develop a climate action plan. It includes strategies for severe weather events, strategies to limit our environmental impact, and strategies for connecting to a second water source to meet Lincoln's growing needs. And you heard Donna, I just realized I need glasses. And you heard Donna talk a little bit about that. But I also want to kind of, be on the same page when we talk about resilience and what that actually means, so that we have a shared understanding of what that means. When I look at this definition of resilience, we're really talking about a crisis or a catastrophic event that has occurred. We've seen and been experiencing a number of those. This isn't our first rodeo. We've all seen winter storms. We've seen flooding. We've been through droughts. We've been through COVID, right? And so this is our ability to maintain systems during those catastrophic events, bounce back from those events, and then even continue to thrive in spite of what's going on. So sometimes you'll see innovation, like a vaccine within a year. I mean, can you even believe we've been able to do that? Adaptation learning, making that American ingenuity possible. So when we talk about resilience, there can actually be a lot of hope in this conversation when we take action. So maintaining systems, bouncing back, and thriving, even in spite of the crisis that we're dealing with. And we are in a crisis. It is a beautiful day outside. It was a beautiful weekend. And sometimes when we have the sun shining and the sky is blue, we often forget what's going on globally. And this isn't to scare people. This is just something that we have to deal with as a community. But there's this relentless rise of carbon dioxide, and it's really impacting the global vital signs that are out there. So yes, these are very important to all of us who inhabit this planet. These are things that we need to be aware of. But as global temperature rises and the oceans warm, we see these impacts on sea level, on sea ice, ice sheets. And it does translate in Nebraska to extreme weather events. And that's what we're seeing in the data. So this is a little bit more relevant to what's happening in Nebraska, what's been happening since 1980. And I want to spend some time here because this is such an informative graph. So you'll see droughts, you'll see flooding, you'll see wildfires. But I wanted you to kind of pay attention to this black line that's traversing all across. It's a 5-year average, and just the bounce that occurs in 2010 and how it bounces up after drought, after some severe storm counts. And then you'll notice in that same era from 2012, where we have 2 droughts occurring back to back, 2012 and 2013. And then you skip over to 2019, the historic flood in blue, followed by severe storms. You just see this increase in both frequency and severity, but also cost. This is costing Nebraskans. So this plan is really about getting proactive about our planning. We're always planning for the weather. That's what Nebraskans do. But it's taking a look at these new trends and understanding them to be able to plan better for our future. So, in light of that kind of increase in the data and severity, frequency, and cost, it was just important to this mayor to do a deep dive into what was happening, understand fully what we're facing, how to assess both projected climate, but also the risks that we might actually experience here in Lincoln, and then how do we mitigate them? How do we get our brains together? We're very smart people. How do we mitigate those risks? So some projections real quick. 5 degrees warmer on average than today is what we are projected to experience if this is business as usual. We'll have 44 days annually with a heat index over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 to 16% increase in winter and spring precipitation totals, 4% less precipitation during summer, the growing season. We are an ag state, and then 15 to 30% increase in heavy precipitation, multi-day extreme precipitation events that increase in severity. So not just severity, but protracted events. And so we really, that affects people like Ron who have to get out and fight snow. So we're going to have a lot of water when we don't need it. We're going to have less water when we do during that growing season. How do we prepare for that? And there's corresponding risk, and that list of 12 is what we're calling out as this is where we need to focus our efforts. When we're talking about what this means to our community, we're looking at flooding, we're looking at drought, and primarily that single water source. So when we say, what are the top 3? It's flooding, drought, and that single water source. There are corresponding risks as well with public health, vulnerable populations, workforce resources, financial resources. We have some pretty antiquated policies that we have to look at, and we have to start considering climate in those updates to those policies, those rules, those regulations. Our transportation system and our reliance on fossil fuel is likely going to change. What does that mean? What does that mean for transportation funding? How do we respond adequately to the natural changes that will happen as this conversation over renewables continues? Food supply. How do we make sure we have adequate food supply? Natural resources, and then, as you were talking about, Mr. Shobe, public awareness. When people are informed and educated, that's what they care about. And then we create those social connections in our community through that education. But here's the thing. There are people in our community who are carrying an incredible amount of burden from an environmental justice standpoint. So the people who are most vulnerable is who we want to be able to help. So we're looking at data on poverty. We're looking at who's having trouble paying their utility bills because of inefficient homes. If we overlay the floodplain on top of poverty data, then we can really understand who needs the most help, because these folks are carrying this heavy toll of multiple burdens. You know, poverty. Poverty is the cause of all causes, but it's also causing disproportionality. There's an aging population that we have in town. We have a lot of new Americans in our city, and that's so exciting. But there are language barriers that we can be proactive about and take action to communicate with them early so we're ready for a possible crisis or extreme weather event. And then food insecurity. The city proposes to take some action in a different way to bring about more local resilient food. But not all is bad, right? This is about actually hope. Lincoln has a tremendous record, which you all have been a part of, You have been a part of building a tremendous record in the area of sustainability and conservation, and it's been a great start. So I know we can do it. We can all come together and do it, and this type of effort is showing up in our data. So when we look at greenhouse gases and the inventory that we have, this downward trajectory is really a great start. We do have an 80 by 50 goal. And what this data demonstrates is that per capita, we're already at 23%, just from the efforts of LES in our city. And one of the best things about this, and why I feel so optimistic, is this is just one side of the coin. The second side is carbon sequestration. This is a technology that we really haven't taken into consideration in this data, and the importance of ecological services. What we have, we're surrounded by prairie, we're surrounded by ag land. We are going to be standing up a pilot for compost. We have a compost program that Donna runs. So this is very encouraging that we can take advantage through a carbon sequestration plan and take matters into our own hands to reach this 80 by 50 goal. So here's the other thing you need to know about data. Taking climate into account is popular. 72% of adult Americans think climate change is happening, and right here in Lancaster County, 75% of adults think it's happening. They want us to act. 67% believe climate change is affecting the weather, and 79% believe climate change will harm future generations. So what do we do about it? How do we act? Well, in a couple of weeks, we'll be bringing forward a 6-year climate action plan for your review and approval. This action will be a resolution to incorporate this 6-year plan into the 2040 comp plan. So again, an aspirational move, but it really does provide us with the right direction to get us started and get us aligning projects that seemingly are independent, but actually have an outcome that is shared. So the vision of that plan is that we'll reduce net greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050 relative to 2011 levels. Again, we're at 23%. Lincoln will be resilient to the climate hazards it will face, and strategic climate directions and climate resilience will be integrated throughout city actions and ordinances. And one of the best examples of that is just taking this measure to incorporate this into the comp plan 2040. There are 8 climate action areas. So this is a very comprehensive plan, and I won't belabor this slide, but we'll get into some key initiatives, and I wanted to make sure you knew the process that we went through to get here. When this began in 2019, there was a public engagement process, and there were over 600 ideas generated from the community. The community really cares about this, and they want us to take action. They had lots of ideas. The draft plan, which was released October 2020, incorporated 365 of those ideas. And that was kind of sent out again for public review and feedback, and we got a number of, between stakeholder meetings and doing the rounds and lots of presentation, we just got lots of feedback. There was a comment card on the website. And the Sustainability Working Group, which is an internal city team, worked with the Climate Resilience Task Force, and they looked at what was achievable, what were the low-hanging fruit, what can we do in 6 years, which is the period of a capital improvement plan. How do we incorporate all of these strategies and ideas into what the city is already currently doing? So we were trying to be pragmatic and fair, as well as really focusing on ourselves and the way that we as a city could act. So following all that, it was reduced to 120 key initiatives over the next 6 years of things we already do and really want to continue to do. These are things that are budgeted for. These are things that are authorized. So they won't come forward to City Council for more action. And then there's new recommendations, and most of those are budgeted, they're authorized, and won't come forward. But there are 20 outstanding items that we'll talk about in 2 weeks. And we can get into that in the list as well if you have any questions. But we're going to need additional funding. We're going to have to identify new funding potentially, source of funding. We might need authority. It might be a rulemaking exercise. So it will come forward to City Council. Went to the Planning Commission. They passed it unanimously. It was a 7-0 vote, and it's on its way to the City Council, where you will hold a public hearing on March 15th. So transitioning to carbon energy, some of the projects that we're calling out are listed here. We want to adopt the 2018 International Energy Code, Conservation Code. It's a commercial provisions. It's required by state law, but the good news is Chad Blaha has been working with the builders on this for the last year. He has found the appropriate amendments, and they'll come forward for mayor's review, and those amendments will then come to you all for additional approval. We do want to conduct a carbon sink inventory. That's where we talked about the carbon sequestration. We do believe we can do that just with staff time through GIS and technology without the expenditure of funds. We want to analyze emissions reduction of key strategies. Is the juice worth the squeeze? So we'll have to do a little bit of technical analysis on how do we maximize our efforts. I've got 50 hours a week. I know you probably all work more than that, but I want to make sure we're working in the right way and on the right things. Analyze landfill gas alternatives. Donna is underway with that. And then a hope to be 100% carbon neutral in our municipal buildings and operations. That's, again, something we can do internally with staff time, just by talking about it and setting those goals. We'd like to look at a city teleworking policy because we've been able to demonstrate that we can still be productive even with it, but we want to make sure that directors have the most autonomy and flexibility in how they divvy up that teleworking. Strengthening public transit and also our bike and trail network, just talking through multimodal and active transportation, making sure we can move people off the street in their single occupancy vehicles, and then transitioning our municipal fleet to 100% renewable, electric, or alternative fuels by 2040. Again, something we can do internally just by talking about it, reorganizing and working in that way. There's a lot we can do with economic development goals, investing in renewable sources of energy, which LES has already done and will continue to do as those technologies come forward for them. Investigate the use of climate resilient bonds if available and if the rates are favorable. But if our good old-fashioned bonding is what we need to do, then that's what we'll do. We'll make sure those rates are favorable to us. There is an effort that's ongoing to build transit service between Lincoln and Omaha, and we think that if we can provide some resources to that effort, it would be good to build up our workforce and promote tourism. We need to secure a second source of water supply, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. You all know that. And those will be strong LTU efforts. So we want to support those efforts. Implement recommendations to the Salt Creek Resiliency Study. That study is really interesting because it's sharing the sort of effects and risks associated with climate change. We used to use 1960s data, and now we're looking at 2014 precipitation data, and it's sharing with us what kind of risks we need to take into account when we plan. There will be more process on that, and Donna talked a little bit about stakeholder outreach and really following our democratic process for rulemaking. That will continue. Ensuring vulnerable neighborhoods are prioritized in emergency management plans. I would love to partner with Ron on communications. Benny, you brought up the way we communicate. We want to do some proactive outreach, have people sign up to receive text messages. We can do that for floods and we can do that for snow. So we'd love to partner with Ron. Building a resilient local food system. Most of the time, we just have permitting activity and health inspections in this space. But the city actually owns a lot of land, 1,700 acres of in row crop production or haying. First of all, we need to be a model of how we do ag. We need to take on those sustainable ag practices. So we switched gears. We changed our contract specs. And now we're doing more regenerative agriculture practices in those contracts. But there's a lot more we can do. We can explore partnerships on city land for commercial food production with entrepreneurial types who want to do some startups in the local food market. And also conduct 128A brownfield site assessments. We get free money from NDEE and through EPA. To do those assessments, we can see if our vacant lots are good for urban agriculture. Maximizing natural climate solutions, continue to support those green areas. That's all going to be part of our carbon sequestration planning. These aren't just pretty areas to look at. That soil in the land, the blacker it is, I mean, that's carbon. That sequesters carbon through micronutrients, and it's an incredible ecological service. So guess what? If I told you there was this incredible technology and engineering out there that would solve some of our atmospheric legacy carbon in the world, well, it's called photosynthesis. So if we can just simply invest in natural climate solutions, we can reap the benefits of bringing down legacy carbon in the atmosphere. Moving toward lower emissions is very important, but this is, again, the other side of that coin. Finally, reducing waste. You'll hear an update from LTU in coming weeks on the solid waste plan. In it, there's a pilot for composting and joining partnerships with LPS and what we can do to divert food systems and food waste and grow compost, because it's a huge benefit on that sequestration plan. And then talking to people, informing, educating, getting out there, making sure we're connected. We maintain these social systems and networks that we have in Lincoln, and that truly is the Lincoln way. So I'd be happy to take any questions you have. I will say you also have another opportunity in 2 weeks when I'll be back with you.
This is going to come back to us, right?
Yes, it will. And that's, in fairness, that's where the public hearing is. So if you want others to be able to have the benefit of your questions, that might be a good time too.
Yes, Councilman Christensen.
Not for answering today, just to know that the question is out there. There's a lot of things, moving parts in this, I understand that. I'd be interested in knowing what the projected cost to the city budget on an annual basis will be for all these things, and if there's also a projected cost, direct cost to residents beyond the taxes they pay to support this.
Okay. Projected costs for the initiatives, but also any projected costs out
to the public.
To the public,
residents
over
of the city.
6 years, you mean? Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And then Mickey, maybe to tag on to
Yeah.
Councilman Christensen's, and the cost of not taking action.
Yeah, we have some, we're working with our insurance companies and just talking a lot about that, but yeah, we can have some numbers on
I mean,
both.
if we're talking about Salt Creek resiliency, if we recognize that we're getting more moisture, and so how are we mitigating some of the potential flooding that we're seeing, or do we build some levees up higher, et cetera, and what is, what's that cost? Or if we don't build the levees up higher, the cost to our constituents would be flooding of their businesses and homes based on these projections, so.
You bet.
Okay. Any other questions for Mickey? I know we will have some at some point, and maybe more, some of us will get a hold of you privately too.
All right, that sounds good. Yes, please reach out to me if you have anything
Yes.
you'd like to talk about.
Director Elliott would like to come forward.
Since I have you all Here. And this is, I just wanted to answer the questions that came up. I had a business manager watching and running numbers for us. So for this year's $5.3 million snow fund budget, we have spent as of today $3.8 million.
My guess was 4.
Now, doesn't necessarily include the last snowstorms. And so as soon as I get those updated figures, I'll provide those. But that's what we have as of right now.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Good,
And
thank you.
And then just to clarify the COPS funding payment, she did clarify for me that we will be paying for that specifically out of the O&M, but it'll be the wheel tax funds that will be paying for the reimbursement.
so Mickey, I have, I'm sorry, Liz, I have just a clarification. So our budget is 5.3 million and we have spent 3.8 million, and you said as of today, but I guess, what does that reflect?
I don't know the last dates of those invoices that have come in yet. We can expect that we're probably about 30 days behind.
Got it, okay.
At least.
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
okay.
Any other questions? Anything else for Mr. Carlson at this time? Okay, seeing none then, we will stand adjourned till 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Yay.